Hey, this is Brad Cox from American Terror, and you're watching the Channa 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 podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my podcast. We have a very special guest today joining all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. We got Brad Cox of the American Terror joining the podcast. Hi Brad.
Hey, what's going on?
How are you? How's your morning?
Everything is good. Another day going smoothly so far, so I can't complain. We'll see what happens throughout the rest of the day, but so far so good.
Right. I'm loving your hat. I'm loving your cap, the Kings.
Oh, nice, man, nice.
you know, very old school, right?
Exactly, man. I try to keep
Right.
it old school.
So Brad, how is the? I know now. I think nobody talks about the pandemic anymore, right? How is the situation now?
uh, every, yeah, good question. Everything's good, man. Can't complain. Everything's good. The band is getting ready to launch a new record and everything like that, and just kind of finding our groove back after the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, and just trying to figure it all out one day at a time.
Right. So Brad, how did this last 2 years affected you, like personally and also towards your music?
I mean, honestly, musically, it definitely affected me. Just the sense of like, my God, it was like every day was a new thing of content to write about. Every day was some bullshit was happening, whether it was protests, vaccine mandates, travel restrictions, all that kind of stuff. So it was just like, for subject matter, I couldn't ask for anything better. It was just like
Right.
every day was something new for me. But personally, I just tried to stay in my groove. Honestly, it didn't really affect me too much. I actually used that time, since nobody else was traveling, for me to travel and take advantage of going to Disney World and Universal and ride roller coasters with no lines and not having to pay for a front of the line pass.
Right.
So I tried to use it to my advantage. Everything was
Yeah.
cheap. Everything was cheap.
Right. But plus, I think the sort of that 2 years actually gave a lot of people like more time, right, to think, like work internally and look at the relationships and work with the family and all this stuff, right? There were a lot of positives also, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of time for self-reflection. It's I try to self-reflect every day of my life and try to stay positive. And so it's like, during the pandemic, it didn't really, I always try to spend that time with myself no matter what. So it wasn't anything new for me, because I try
Mhm.
not to get too caught up in the day-to-day world and bull crap. And I always take time to focus on myself, no matter what is going on. So, you know, I know a lot of bands and a lot of people, when you talk to them, they were like, oh man, I rethought my life. I rethought my goals. I rethought this. I stayed on course, because I
Right.
just knew everything that was kind of going on was just going to be a blip in the radar. It was definitely going to change things, but I couldn't sit there and worry about how things are going to change, the changes are going to affect me. I've always been an adapter, so whatever's thrown at me, I always just try to adapt and not try to look, a panic or worry or make any life changes
Mm.
during times like that of uncertainty, because at that point I feel like you start letting your emotions affect
Right.
your decisions, and I try not to do that.
Right. So you know how I got to know American Terror is because I get a lot of these emails from a lot of these different promoters and PR people. Then I think there's this person called Keith Morash. I think
Yeah.
he started sending me a lot of stuff, and then the band photo that you guys use was really caught my eye. And then I don't know, it looked very familiar to me because I also love a lot of this heavy metal and the new metal and all that, that sort of punk and
Right.
stuff. So it really got my attention. Then that's why I went and checked some of the music, and then I thought I definitely need to talk to these guys.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to know that the outreach is working. Keith is a great guy. I met Keith when we were assigned to EMP,
Mm,
and him and I just kind of really hit it off. And he was an up and coming kind of PR guy, but he worked his ass off, and I respected that. And he really knows how to knock on doors and make it happen. And so yeah, we've now I wouldn't go with anybody else. So I'm glad to know that it is working. Him beating down your door, sending you shit.
right. So, Brad, before we talk about the band, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood and what's your earliest memory of music?
Man, my earliest memories of music. I have a couple of them. I mean, one happens to be on VHS of me as a little tiny kid. I think, yeah, probably preschool time. My dad made a video of me like out in the yard dancing to Ghostbusters,
Right.
Ghostbusters theme song. So that was definitely ingrained in my brain. And then, moments that really from back in my early childhood that I remember was, getting Michael Jackson Thriller. That was a huge moment for me. And then for some reason, I always remember when I was a kid, always trying to record on the boombox, Rock Me Amadeus or whatever, back in the 80s. And yeah, so those were like, that is when I think I really discovered music. I used to walk around with a Michael Jackson glove on and
Mm,
all this kind of stuff. And so, and I'm talking like this is preschool, days. So, but I was infatuated with music
mm,
then at that point. So that those would be my earliest memories for sure.
right. So, as you were discovering music, what sort of bands and music do you remember, like early on?
I mean, early child, past that like preschool era, like when I really started like seeking out music,
Mm,
it was, man, trying to really think. It was like Skid Row, Poison. Um, I had an older brother, so I got introduced to stuff a lot younger than most people my age.
right,
And he was more into like the Metallica, Danzig, and the heavier stuff.
right.
So I remember like my first introduction to Skid Row, that was a major memory of mine. Was we were both like hyped up, or he had hyped up this band called Skid Row that was supposed to be coming out, and they were going to do a world premiere video on MTV.
Mm,
And I remember we were both fighting about going to the record store and who was going to buy the cassette. And he's like, "No, man, I discovered the band. I discovered the band." No. And anyways, he ended up buying it, and he listened to it. He's like, "This is pussy music. This sucks." He's like, "These songs are gay and they're for chicks." So he gave it to me, and I was like, "I like it. So fuck off." So from that moment on, it's like he started hating hair metal. So like all his
right.
porn cassettes and all that kind of stuff, he passed down to me, and I ended up really liking it. So I started seeking out bands like Twisted Sister, Quiet Riot, Poison, Def Leppard, Warrant. Warrant was a big one of mine that I loved. And then I started getting into hip hop a little bit.
Mm,
Like Two Live Crew and stuff like that. And then Too Short. Obviously, I'm wearing a Too Short shirt. And NWA, Ice
right.
Cube. Um, that was the stuff that I really remember trying to figure out how to get my hands on it because I was too young to buy it because everything was explicit lyrics. So I was always bribing people older than me outside of a store, giving them a couple bucks to go in and buy the CD for me or tape or whatever. And so that was definitely my earliest memories of trying to seek stuff out. And then from there, it just, from high school and went to like Korn, Marilyn Manson, and stuff like that. So
Right. Because you mentioned Korn and Marilyn Manson, because a lot of your songs, I actually see that sort of vocals in your songs, right?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, I love like Corn, Biohazard, and Marilyn Manson on the metal side kind of shaped me early on. Some Deftones, stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, those were a huge influence on me, especially the first two Corn records and Marilyn Manson, Portrait of an American Family. Like those records still to me today are like the holy grail. I think they're so freaking good. Um, so yeah, that was a major influence on me. So I don't think I'd be doing what I do without those bands. And Biohazard was a major one for me too,
right.
because I started getting into punk and and a lot of the hardcore stuff like Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, Circle Jerks, Dead Kennedys. And so like Biohazard had that fusion of the hip hop that I liked, the
Mm,
cool metal riffs that I liked with like the grooves of like Korn and that kind of stuff, but then the punk rock shit too. You know what I mean? So like Urban Discipline and State of the World Address, like I just thought were the coolest freaking records, hands down. So that's kind of where it all really started with me, of where I was like, man, I want to start doing music. So that was definitely the starting point.
right. Before American Terror, you before previously you had some bands before, right? You even with your guitarist Pat, right? You actually had some bands, right?
Yeah, I mean, my first band, I think it was when I was about 16. It was called Yuppie Scum, and we played a lot of shows. We played a lot around Atlanta, traveled outside of Atlanta. Um, and that's where I started like meeting guys from like Seven Dust,
Mm,
Snot, and because we kept being in the same venues, or they were playing across the street from us, and we kind of started networking. And Stuck Mojo was another huge one from Atlanta, and kind of befriended those guys too. Um, so yeah, Yuppie Scum was my first band, and then from that band, I joined a band called Drevity, um, and that was my first introduction to touring, you know, around the Southeast, and I was probably 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. And then
mm,
from there, I was in a band called Super Jack. And that band, I'd say, was my first pro band. That we were managed by Billy Milano from SOD, MOD.
mm,
And we toured with MOD and all those bands, and did shows like Metal Fest stuff with like El Nino, and basically did full US tours where we were out for like month, 2 months. And then I quit that band and started a 80s rock type band called Grayson Manor. And that band really started taking off. It was kind of, yeah, it definitely took off quicker than I expected. But we
right.
were touring with like Saliva, Hoobastank, bands like that. But at the same time, we were doing shows with like Winger, Faster
Right.
Pussycat. Brent Muscat from Faster Pussycat played guitar for us with us for a little while. I had a big problem of just going through band members like crazy. The first record was pretty stable, but then we had a record deal on the table, and when the record deal was presented to us, I think the deal, they only wanted to sign me and the drummer to the deal, and the
Mm,
rest of the band members wouldn't be part of the contract. And that started a huge fight amongst the band, and everybody thought that I was just trying to steal the money, and I was trying to just write all the songs, and they felt like they were being cut out. So they all formed an alliance against me, kind of, and they said, we're writing the song, screw you. And I'm like, I wrote every freaking song that got us here. And they're like, yeah, you're just trying to take the money, blah. So it was a bunch of crap. And so we were supposed to do a showcase with the label, and like Gilby Clark was there, Nikki Sixx, Like
Wow.
all these other record execs from even major labels too were there to scout us, and they wanted to hear all the new material that we had. And so the band basically shut me out, and said, we're writing the songs, you're going to sing what we write. And at that point I was just like, you know what, fuck you. Like, I just didn't care at that point, you know. I was like, that's fine, like, this is going to go really badly, but for sure I'll sing your songs. So sure enough, I went in and learned the songs, sang the songs, and everybody passed on the band. And they were like, this isn't the band. What happened to the songs? The songs sucked. They were cheesy. They didn't have the piss and vinegar attitude like the first record did. So at that point I fired everybody in the band and started over, and that's when I made the second record, Children of the Manor. And we did that with Robert Carranza, that did Beastie Boys and Ozomatli and all that kind of stuff. And we did it on 2-inch tape, you know, like old school. But I used all session players because I didn't have a band anymore. So I wrote the whole record. And I mean, most of the songs that were on that record were songs that were written to showcase that the band passed on. And so anyways, we did that and toured pretty heavily off that. Got a deal with an independent label at that point called Bad Reputation out of France, but toured pretty heavy. And I guess to circle back around where I was going with this, since going through guitar players, I went through probably 7 guitar players on one tour. I could not keep band members. And part of the problem is I've been sober my entire life. I've never done a drug, never had a drink. And, you know, in a lot of the bands that I was in, especially Superjack, a lot of those guys were doing drugs, partying like crazy. They treated me like shit, you know, like I was vegetarian and stuff. They would throw out my food. I'd go to vintage like record stores and find like Skid Row records and stuff like that. They would break them, you know, be like, this shit sucks, you know, and just totally treated me like fucking dirt. And I just did not want to have a touring experience like that again. So it just got to the point where it was like time to leave, to go to the next city. We couldn't find the fucking guitar player. He's drunk, he's high, he's hooking up, you know what I mean? It was just like constantly something going wrong. And you know, so we just get rid of one, fly in another, get rid of one, fly in another. And ultimately that just kind of got tiresome. And I was just like, you know what, this is totally turned into a solo thing. And I decided to just kind of do a solo project. And around that time at Grayson Manor, I met the guys in Velvet Revolver, Duff and Slash, and them. They had called me up to audition. And so through them, I met producer Mike Klink that produced all the Guns N' Roses stuff. So Mike and I kind of stayed in contact, and Mike was never a fan of Grayson Manor. He came out to the showcases and he's just like, he didn't understand it. He didn't get it, but he was like, keep in touch, keep writing songs, keep sending them to me. I like you, I just don't like the songs. So I started writing new material as a solo thing, and he really liked it and thought there was something there. And so he gave me a production deal, and we did my first solo record. And from there, him and I just formed a really good friendship and working relationship. And I was starting to produce bands around that time, and I had a studio here. The first Grayson Manor CD I actually produced myself. That was my first record I ever did. But like, you know, Lars from Rancid had come to my studio. I was starting to do stuff for Disney and a lot of you know, pop music for film and TV. And Mike and I decided to start forming a company together and be partners and doing stuff. And yeah, I know I just went down a hole.
Yeah. So
yeah, you wanted the history of my life. There it is.
There it is. So writing like pop songs for Disney, and how did that turn to American Terror? How did that happen?
So if you want me to keep going down this road, so it was kind of funny because my solo stuff was a little bit more poppy. It was actually more Americana, like Tom Petty meets Bon Jovi. But I started writing with Billy Falcon, that wrote a lot of the Bon Jovi stuff from the Crush albums forward. And at that point, I was really focused on just trying to be a damn good songwriter. I just wanted to have really catchy songs. So I hooked up with Andreas Carlson, which wrote a lot of the Bon Jovi stuff off the Bounce record, but he had also written all the like Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way, Katy Perry, Britney Spears, all that stuff. And so him and I connected, and believe it or not, he's a metalhead. Like, I showed up to his house and he's sitting there with an Iron Maiden freaking book with his guitar, shredding Maiden. And, Max Martin, that co-wrote all that stuff too, he was a metalhead also. So I kind of figured out, like, all these guys writing all these pop songs are actually metalheads, and there was a common thread there, but there was just something so challenging and interesting to me of constructing a really strong pop song, because I never knew how complicated it was, because I'd always kind of written it off as just fluff, and I was just like, dude, it's the most elementary school shit. And then when you start to try to write that stuff, you realize there's a fine line between brilliance and cheesy, and they were brilliant. So I kind of took it amongst myself to try to learn the art of just writing good, catchy pop songs. And so working with him, it really opened my eyes of how in depth that stuff really, really was. And yeah, it just totally interested me. So from there, I busted my ass, because I was like, cool, I can write metal songs, I can write rock songs. I need a new challenge. So I started writing pop stuff, and, contacted Disney, and, through that, I started writing with them and doing stuff for them and ABC Family, and developing pop artists. And then I guess where American Terror came in was I was really knee deep in the pop stuff. And, I got called to write for One Direction and all these pop records. And it was driving me crazy, because I'd go into all these songwriting sessions, and things that I was just saying or ideas that I came up with, a lot of people were starting to get offended by, or they'd be like, yo, you can't say shit. You can't say fuck. You can't, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, this will add to the song. I'm not trying to cuss just to cuss. Like, so I started feeling like my hands were tied a little bit in that world. And as much as I loved it, I knew there was that side of me that needed to come out. That's why I was into hardcore rap and metal and stuff like that, and punk. And it's because I had that in me, and I felt like I just kind of buried that deep to have a career. And so yeah, one day I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do a band that I can say whatever the fuck I want, and I don't care. And that's where American Terror kind of came into play. And as far as getting the band members, Pat Valley, the guitar player, he was in Grayson Manor, towards the middle to end of Grayson Manor. GK, the bass player, he's our live bass player. He actually came from as early as Super Jack, so I've known him since early 2000s. And he was in the early part of Grayson Manor that we parted ways and all that kind of stuff, but we put all that shit behind us, and it's all good. And then Rob Hammersmith from Skid Row, we met him, me and Pat met him by playing here in Atlanta. They did these like local nights of like charity stuff where they'd have like Iron Maiden night, Queensryche night, and stuff like that. And wherever, they would piece together the band, and you just had to play with those musicians. So I don't remember. I think it was Iron Maiden we got called to do. So I did Run to the Hills, and Rob was the drummer, and we got along then. We were like, oh, this is cool. And then I got a call to do a Queensryche one. And before the show then, I'd had the idea of this band, and I was like, Rob, like, you're a cool fucking dude. We like the same shit. Are you interested in doing something outside of Skid Row? And told him kind of what I was thinking. And he was like, fuck yeah, man. He's like, Skid Row's my priority, obviously, but he's like, count me in, let's do this. And so from there, we kind of put the band together. And GK, the live bass player, he lived in another state. and his availability wasn't, great. He didn't have a portable recording rig or anything like that. So I contacted Murphy, the original bass player for Sugar Ray, because I loved Sugar Ray. Those first two records are so fucking badass. Like, yeah. So the bass playing on that stuff, I was like, this is sick. So I contacted Murphy and I was like, hey, are you interested in being in the band? And I flew out to LA, we had dinner, talked about it, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I'd love to do the records. He's like, I can't really commit to touring or doing anything, too heavily right now. He's like, if I can do the shows, I will, but if I can't, I can't. So yeah, so he ended up playing on the first record. And after that, we started writing for the second record. And one of the songs we wrote that's on the new album coming out, he co-wrote with me, and it was actually an old Sugar Ray song from their second record. The hook came from that in the riff, and then I kind of filled in the blanks. But him and I parted ways just because he just got busy, and it was just taking too long to get bass tracks, and which I totally understand. He was writing a book, and he had a couple other things going on, like outside of music. And so yeah, but we're still good friends and still keep in touch, and all's good. But yeah, so that's kind of how the band kind of came together and went from the pop stuff to the metal stuff. It was basically me just being fed up of keeping my mouth shut in sessions. And and also when you're writing with like a lot of pop artists that are like 16, 17 years old that are females, you really have to be on your best behavior and keep your mouth shut and not say anything fucking weird. You know what I mean? It's like nothing, it's just the day and age we live in. So it's like you find yourself, you can't be yourself. And I'm a total smart ass. I say whatever comes to my mind. I have no filter. I offend people on a daily basis. You could ask my girlfriend. She can't believe half the shit that comes out of my mouth. But but that's just me. And it's just I'm not a politically correct person. And I grew up in the 80s where like nothing was politically correct. I'm trying to hurt anybody's feelings or that I hate people or that I, whatever. It's just I'm a smart ass, and I always go for the joke when I can,
Yeah, actually, I actually miss those 80s, early 90s, that era where you can say anything, and the purpose of music and art was to piss off the status quo, right? It was the purpose of it. Like everybody did it, even the pop or whatever, they all did it, right? And nobody really, I mean, there was always like somebody would write something about it and maybe just talk about it on a TV, and then they forget about it, then they moved on, right? It's not like they didn't keep that as offended for like forever on that, right?
Yeah, you say one thing wrong and it ruins your entire life, and it's I mean, it's like you go back and watch some of those movies and you're like, my God, these would never get made these days. And I mean, they're amazingly written movies and shit and songs, but nowadays it would never come out, which is just really sad, because it's like to me as a whether you're a film writer or a songwriter, you're a storyteller, so it's like that doesn't necessarily mean that's how you feel and that's how you live. You're telling the story of somebody else's life, and people from all walks of life exist, whether they're racist, they're whatever, they're out there and they're living. Why not tell the story? You know what I mean? You shouldn't be shunned for expressing what really is going on as a storyteller. It doesn't mean that's how I feel, but my job is to portray a perspective of what's going on in the world and what's out there. And you shouldn't be demonized for that and have somebody combing through every little thing that you say and go, wait a minute, what did you really mean there? Oh, well, I don't know. That could go this way. So if it could go that way, let's not say that because somebody might take it that way. And it's like, I don't give a fuck how anybody takes it. Take it however the fuck you want. You know what I mean? Like, I know how I feel in my heart, and I know who I am in my heart. And that's all that matters. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's just frustrating, but whatever.
So one of these songs in your influence album. I even it feels like even naming that album as an influencer really reflect the society, right? Because everybody wants to be an influencer, right?
Right.
That's right. So one of the songs which I really loved listening is Judgment. And then when I thought I was listening it, I just remembered what happened with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, like, the trial. And then
Right.
listening that song is like, it's that song.
That's funny. Does that make it timeless? Maybe.
Yeah, it makes timeless. That song, if you play that song with a video of Amber Heard, it's like exactly, I think that's it.
That's funny. That's awesome. That's hilarious. I mean, that song, it's funny because as a songwriter, I used to never write from personal perspectives. I
Right.
always very against writing about my personal life and my personal experiences. I don't know why. I just always felt like I was a storyteller and I shouldn't bore people with the details of my life. But then with this band, I started coming out of my shell a little bit and writing personal experiences. So Judgment actually came. There was two meanings behind it.
Mm.
One was when I was out playing shows and stuff like that, doing solo stuff, and the venue would be like, hey, you can't say fuck, you can't say shit, no cussing, you got to watch your language here. And I'm like, wait a minute, somebody's snorting coke in the bathroom, you're serving people alcoholic drinks, Jaeger bombs, and freaking everybody's getting fucked up and shit faced.
Right.
That's okay, but I can't say fuck. Like, how is that acceptable? It's okay to watch underage people, they're people around them get shit-faced drunk and they're cussing like sailors, but Lord forbid I say it.
I
You
see.
know what I mean? Like, that pissed me off because I just felt like that's just a total double standard. And then the double standard also comes in personally with family shit, with my brother and his wife. And basically she's supposed to be this hardcore Christian, and all this kind of stuff. And she's done a lot of fucked up things in her time in her life that I could judge her on, that I don't. To me, she's family. But she never wanted my brother to be around me. She always thought I was a bad influence. So it caused a big wedge between me and my brother, even still to this day, that he's not really allowed to hang out with me or speak to me or whatever,
Right.
because I cuss and I'm a bad influence. And yet, so it's like, but yet she drinks, she gets drunk, she gambles, her family's big gamblers. They, like all this stuff. But the word fuck is where it crosses the line. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it was kind of like this double standard that I get sick of like, people pick and choose what part of the Bible or what part of, moral code they're going to live by. And if it doesn't fit their code of living, then you're wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, no, you can't pick and choose what is okay and what's not okay. Either you live like a saint or you don't. And if you don't live like a saint on any part of that, you have no right to judge anybody's situation or anything in their life, because you don't know how that person grew up. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know why that person's over there fucking shooting up heroin. You don't know what happened in his life that day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like, at the core of it, if somebody's a good fucking person, that's all that matters. If nobody's lying and stealing and cheating and being a dishonest, horrible person to you, who gives a fuck what they do? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So that's kind of where that came from, was just me being fed up, and the lyrics of it more come out in the remix, the remix version, where I can really say, a lot of shit, because I had a lot more time rapping that I could get a lot more words in. So,
Right.
but that's where that frustration kind of just came into, because as a society, I kind of get sick of that shit. And I mean, I know, I loved like the whole straight edge scene, and I knew a lot of my straight edge friends would totally get judged and all this kind of shit is like a total fuck up drug addict, partier and all this kind of shit because they're tatted from head to toe, but they're the most sober, walk the straight line, most genuine, nice people you will ever meet. And, like they just got a bad rap and, it's just fucked up that as a society, you're kind of guilty by association of things instead of looking at the core of what people really are and all that kind of stuff. So sorry for
Yeah, I
that
think.
long explanation there, but
Yeah, I think a lot of time the punks and the metalheads and all this, they get judged. Basically, they get judged by the cover, right?
right.
That's it, right? That's exactly what happens.
Yeah,
So
I
they
mean,
don't.
totally. Like an experience happened with me when I was younger. Um, my my brother, I think, yeah, my brother was in the hospital getting his appendix taken out, and the I went to my car, I was leaving, and somebody had hit my car in the parking lot, like really bad, and I called the police. And at that time, I had dreads, septum ring. I was wearing like an I Hate God hoodie,
Mm,
and all this kind of stuff. And I called the police and I was like, hey, somebody hit my car. And he started interrogating me, asking for my registration, asking for this. And he's like, are you sure this is your car? And I'm like,
right.
what? Really? So he was like accusing me of shit. And my brother's girlfriend at the time happened to be a lawyer. And she was there and she came out and like gave them hell. And we actually put a lawsuit against them. And it was just fucked up. And it was all because the way that I looked, that obviously I must be pulling something over on him and I must be doing something wrong and something's off, or, you know what I mean? Or I hit something and I'm trying to blame somebody else for it. It's shit like that, that it's unfortunate that, yeah, if you look different outside the normal khakis and polo shirt and don't look like you go to a 9-to-5 job, you're obviously a fuck up and a screw up and all that kind of shit. And like, that's fucked up. And I hate that stuff, man, because I've
Right.
never been a conformist. I've always been weird. And, going back to my, early childhood, as we talked about that, like I was actually a baseball player. So I played high school baseball, then did like a AAA team.
Mm,
Some schools wanted me for colleges wanted me for playing baseball. But even playing baseball in high school, I had green hair, purple hair, and I got benched from the games because I would not conform and color my hair back.
right.
And I didn't give a fuck. I'm like, fuck you. Like, that does not change my skill set. I made this team. You know what I mean? Like, just
Right.
because my fucking hair color does not fit you. And that was another one of those coaches that was a total Christian, that, I'm like, really? Yeah, all right, whatever. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I've never been a conformist, and I don't believe that people should be judged like that, for looking different. I mean, to me, until you've proven something to not be trustworthy or something that's fucked up, I'm gonna welcome you with open arms. You know what I mean? It is what it is,
Mm,
because I don't want somebody looking at me that way, because I know what that feels like my whole life.
right. Brad, I also want to ask you regarding one of the real songs that I really love from the Influence album is the track Legend. I just read that this is actually a song from House of Pain.
Yes. So yes, it was a basically a House of Pain lost track.
Right.
It's not on any of the streaming platforms. You can find a version of it on YouTube, but it was actually just a one-off single that they
Mm,
put out around the same time as their second album. And I've always had a copy of it on vinyl. And yeah, that song was always so badass to me because they had the rock remix version, which is the version that we covered.
mm,
And I was just like, man, why the fuck did this never see the light of day? So to me, it was just such a cool song. So I was just trying to think of some ideas of stuff that I just thought would be fun to do as one-off songs for us. And I was like, let's do that song. the other guys in the band are not big rap fans, so it took a little convincing, but they kind of got the idea of it and all that kind of stuff. It was totally cool. But yeah, that song just always connected to me just because of the lyrical content of that song. About the drug use and like how sometimes you have to die before you become a legend. You know what I mean? And it's like it's proven itself true too many times, with like Sublime and all that kind of shit. It's like you don't appreciate somebody until they've done something fucked up and overdosed or whatever. They're like, oh shit, they're the greatest thing ever. Well, where were you when they were alive? You know what I mean? So something about that song always connected with me. And also I think it was Everlast's delivery of that song, just the tonality and just the brutal honesty that was behind his voice on that track just sat with me really well. And I mean, I re-recorded my vocals for that song probably 12 times. Every time I thought it was done, I go back and listen. I'm like, I didn't capture that essence that he had. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I can't, if I'm going to put out something that's a cover, I need to do it just as good or better. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I sat there and just redid it until finally I was like, I think I got it, because I thought it was important to capture the emotion and the energy and the attitude behind it. So.
Yeah, I think that was an amazing version. I mean, it doesn't feel like a cover, but I mean, it feels like a song from you guys, right? Like,
right. Yeah. So I thought it was very, very fitting. And plus, we were still trying to figure out the sound of the band too, a little bit. The first record, it's a little all over the place. But the new record is a lot more, okay, we found our sound, and messing with Legend and stuff like that helped kind of define a little bit more of the direction for the full record too.
Right. So talking about the new record, when is it coming out? And what it's called?
July 8th, I believe, and it's called Where We Are. The majority of it's been done for a long time. We released the End of America single just recently. But before that, we released it like a year and a half ago. And every news outlet, everything blocked it. Spotify blocked it. We were like, what the hell is going on? So I actually contacted some of my, contacts at different magazines and stuff like that normally give us press. And I was like, yo, dude, like, why are you ghosting my song? And they were like, it's way too polarizing. It's way too, it'll scare the hell out of our audience. And I'm like, you're a metal page. Like, you have Cannibal Corpse, you have people mutilated. Like, how is the front cover of this single and this song too terrifying? And the original front cover was me hanging from a noose in front of an American flag. And they were like, the problem is that's fantasy and this is reality. This is the reality we live in now. And with everything else going on in the world, and all the Black Lives Matter, the negativity, the racism, the vaccine, and the politically being so divided, they were like, this is way too fucked up to put out there, So we made a decision at that point just to kind of hold back, and we pulled the song, and we're like, let's just wait for the political climate to kind of blow over a little bit and things get a little bit more normal. And I wouldn't say shit's normal now, but at this point I was just like, my God, like, I can't sit on this fucking record anymore. So at this point, I don't give a fuck if nobody wants to do press on it. I don't give a shit. Fuck it, we're putting it out. So that was kind of the mentality behind this, was just, I don't want to sit on it anymore. The record's too good, and I'm ready to move on and close that chapter of my life and open the next one. And maybe it'll be a record. If nobody hears it now, it'll be a record people come back to 10 years from now and be like, this thing was brilliant. You know what I mean? How did I never hear of this? And it is what it is. So
so your single End of America, so do you think it's really America is coming to a decline?
Man. I would say it is definitely not the same America that I grew up in. You know what I
Mm,
mean? I do believe that it is changing. Um, and I don't think it's changing for the better. I feel like a lot of our rights and our freedoms are trying to be taken away. Are there some things that need to change? From our, original, documents, our forefathers, whatever, and laws that were put into place, and the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. Do I think there's things that need to be updated? Yes, because the times have changed. There's a lot more,
right.
a lot more stuff out there. So I think there's things that can be tweaked. But the problem is to me, the America, the great thing about it was we were unified. Even though we were divided and we were always a little divided, we were able to come together and unify. And now we've become to this place where you're either extreme right or you're extreme left. There's
Mm,
no middle ground anymore. It's like you can't be friends with a Democrat if you're a Republican.
right.
And you know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, to me, the world goes around with the yin and the yang. You need that.
Mm,
And to me, that's where the best things are how things are solved, is by learning and understanding other people's thoughts and opinions. Because like I mentioned earlier, we all grew up differently. We all see things differently. And I mean, I had my own awakening of that a little bit when I was listening to the Mark Maron podcast, and he had Obama on there. Like, I
mm,
was never an Obama fan. I didn't understand it. I just thought this guy was trying to ruin our country, and
right.
I'm just like, like whatever. But then I'm an open-minded person. So when I saw that podcast popped up, I was just like, I want to hear the real Obama, not President Obama. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Mark Maron is such a good host or whatever. So I was like, I'm going to throw this thing on. And then once I kind of heard his perspective of how he grew up and everything around him and how he was raised, it all made sense to me. I was like, he's not deliberately trying to fuck shit up. He's doing
Right.
what he honestly feels in his heart is right, based on how he was raised. And that experience hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized I had judged somebody before I really got to know their background, and that I had been
Exactly.
manipulated by the media, you know, and that kind of fucked with my head for a second. So, I listened through the whole podcast, and, you know, I still don't think he was a great president. You know what I mean? That doesn't change my whatever, but having that perspective of that he was just truly trying to do what he honestly believed in his heart was right, maybe gain a whole new respect for him,
Respect. Right.
and I mean, even during the time when he was president, like, it was, I respect, I don't care who's president, I respect them because they're the president. You know what I mean? Whether you agree with him or not. And I feel like that's gone to the wayside nowadays too, of like, people disrespect
Mm,
whoever our commander in chief is of our country. And you don't have to like them, you don't have to agree with them, you don't have to vote for him, but they're still your commander in chief. You know what I mean? And I feel like there should be some level of a respect there, um, and not going to their face and spitting on them and saying "fuck you." Like, you shouldn't do
right.
that to anybody. So that was
Yeah.
uh that was a big eye opener for me of stuff like that. And so looking at where the country is headed now, the division amongst us, and I feel like it started with the Obama thing, and it was just because the Republicans hated Obama, trying to discredit him because he wasn't born in this country, he wasn't this, it
Mm,
was always some fucking excuse and some bullshit.
right.
And they couldn't get over the fact that he won as president. And to me, that's when the division started. So then when Trump became president, the Democrats are like, oh, he's a fraud, he's this, he's that, it was the same shit, with just on the other side.
Correct.
And it's like nobody could accept it. And it's like we've never gone back to, like George Bush and Bill Clinton playing golf together. Like,
Mm,
people used to get along on both sides. You could go eat dinner together and it was okay. because that's how things got solved, was by friendships and by communication and being open to understanding other people's thoughts and feelings and finding the compromise. And it's like nowadays, nobody wants to find the compromise on anything. And so with that, to me, that puts this country in a dangerous state, because we keep going back and forth to where all Democrats are in power, all Republicans are in power, or you have the House and the Senate that's one's Republican, one's Democrat. Nobody wants to work with each other. So one will pass this, then they block that, and nothing gets done. Right. And then you start doing all these executive orders of things that are almost out of spite. You know what I mean? And so to me, as we had spoken earlier, I don't like to do things driven out of passion and out of emotions. And I feel like a lot of decisions are made out of passion and emotion. So like when Joe Biden became president, him overturning every one of Trump's policies, it just felt like you didn't analyze it. It was just kind of like, if he did it, I want it out. If he did it, I want it out.
Right.
And, Trump was guilty of some of the same things, not to that extreme, but it felt childish, And so if we keep moving forward as a country, acting like a bunch of fucking children, we're done. You know what I mean? And so that's why I feel like it's not the same America that it used to be, because we used to be unified. And I do blame the media. The media, I feel like, wants to divide us because we're more valuable divided. Because you take like what happened with the January 6th thing here in the US with the Capitol. I always look at that and it's like, to me, if we would have been unified and the right and the left were on the same side and the same team, we would have overtaken Washington. It would have been done. You know what I mean? And I always say there's strengths in numbers. So if you start dwindling down those numbers and dividing us, the people in power are always going to stay safe, because not everybody's going to unify against them. And not saying that we need to overthrow our government or whatever the fuck, but when you start acting like jackasses and start acting like children, people get pissed off, people get angry, and people want to overthrow the government. But if you act like civilized human beings that actually give a shit about the people and stop forcing things on people and act like this country how it used to be, and the morals and the values we had and what our democracy was set in place to do, I feel like you wouldn't have angry people trying to overthrow the government. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make any sense at all?
Yes. Actually, to be honest, I feel that whether it's the governing party or the opposition, it happens in these regions as well, right? They're really united because they have their own cause. They're dividing the people, but they actually, on that level, they're actually united. They have their own common goals, right?
They have their own agenda, 100%. But, it used to be, hey, we have our own agenda. Fuck you. But here's a bone. You know what I mean? Like now we don't even get a bone. It's just like, you're going to live in our agenda. You know what I mean? And you're going to do everything. It's starting to feel like, communism, like Nazi Germany or some shit. Like, I don't know. I believe in people having rights and people having freedoms. And, and it's funny because a lot of people can't tell if we're a right-wing band or if we're a left-wing band. And I kind of wanted it that way because the band actually is divided, some are Biden people, some are Trump people. And, but you know what? Look, we're all friends and we're all making records.
And then you're able to make music together, right? Despite of that.
Exactly. And you know what? And we're able to have good conversations and we're able to see both sides are fucked up. You know what I mean? And to me, if like, that's how this country needs to operate, is, and like this band operates. No, but it's just like accepting everybody's differences and finding that common goal and that common ground and figuring out how to get there. Because we're all fucked if we keep acting like selfish elementary school kids.
Right. I like that what you said about the podcast, because that's the reason I'm actually doing podcasts as well, because I feel this long form conversation where, because if it is like a TV report or something, you get like few minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes to say something, right? And then they chop
Right.
it off. But
Exactly.
in this long form conversations, we tend to get these different perspectives and the history and the background of that person. And same as you, I actually changed my mind. I had I had this kind of a different respect for all these different people that I, through the podcast and all these interview type things, where like I love the one that David Letterman is doing, like he's bringing
Right.
these different icons and then they talk about. So Brad, that was a really fun conversation. So tell me, what are the plans for the bands? So what's happening? The album is coming in July, and then
Yes. I'm going to plug in my laptop real quick so I don't lose you. Hold
right,
on 1 second.
right.
All right, cool. Sorry about that. I've been rambling way too much and it's draining my battery. So for the band, basically, we're not really sure. We're kind of playing it day by day. Honestly, we're trying to get some shows figured out. We wanted to do shows, a year or so ago, when the pandemic was ending and bands were touring again, but so many venues were backlogged and so many bands had canceled their tours that we couldn't hop on tours with other bands, because basically other people that had tours were having to piggyback off tours together at that point. So we kind of got shut out. So now we're trying to figure it all out again now of how to make it work and have it make sense. So that's kind of our focus right now, is trying to get some live dates on the books and doing new merch. So we're going to have a new merch store soon, because we haven't had any t-shirts or anything like that, and people have been asking us for stuff. So we're going to be launching that, and we're in the process of writing the next record right now also. So
Right. So Brad, what's your message to the viewers of this video and people who's going to listen to this conversation?
my message is, don't be an asshole. It's simple. It's fucking simple. Don't be an asshole. No, no, my message to people would be like, God, I have so many messages, so many words of wisdom from, no, it's, my message is always keep an open mind, whether it's music, whatever it may be, keep an open mind to new experiences and new things, because you never know what you're going to enjoy, and me living by that motto has really helped open my eyes to new music and shit that I never would have discovered, and new experiences, and just it helps make you grow as a person. So to me, never stop growing, keep an open mind, and find a way to channel whatever you're feeling. Like, I feel like I going back to the songwriting thing and why I started American Terror and stuff, it's like I felt like I wasn't 100% true to myself, because I was chasing a dollar and a paycheck and all that kind of shit or whatever. And it's like, that's okay to do that, but never forget about yourself and who you are, and never lose yourself in that path. You know what I mean? Always stick true to who you are and who, what's in your heart, and do the fucking right thing. You know what I mean? Don't try to show out and do shit that you think is cool when it's not the right thing in your heart, whatever the fuck. Stay true to who you are, do the fucking right thing, rock out, have fun, get in the fucking mosh pit, get some, fucking anger out and get some of those emotions out, whatever you're going through. And because everybody, and that's the thing, is like, everybody's going through some bullshit, whether somebody has a smile on their face or not. Everybody has some anger, some feelings, some shit they're going through in their life that they need to get out. So fucking do it in a healthy way, and go see some fucking metal shows and punk shows, and find a group of misfits and have some fun,
Right. Brad, Anybody you want to shout out to?
I mean, I got to shout out to my band members, of course, so yeah, I wouldn't be doing this shit without them, because truthfully, they push me to, especially my guitar player, Pat. He pushes me to fucking, Brad, get to work. Brad, write a song. Hey, I've written these riffs. What do you think? Damn it, leave me alone. But pushes me to make it happen. So shout out to my band members, and shout out to Keith, because without Keith, this podcast would have never happened. And shout out to all the fans and everybody out there that has actually listened to this whole podcast and me rambling on. I appreciate you for actually sticking through it. God bless you. I'm sorry I just wasted an hour of your life. And
right. So Brad, lastly, tell everybody how they can follow you and the band, and then how they can listen to your music. But what is the best way?
Oh man, the best way is Google it. American Terror Band. Everything will pop up. But everything's on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever you have, and Instagram. We're okay with our Instagram and Facebook. I think we update it pretty decently. So now that we have new shit coming out, we are updating it recently. So you can give us a shout on there. We always love hearing from people. So yeah, all your social media platforms, streaming platforms, YouTube, all that good stuff, you'll find us, and probably the same places we find this badass podcast.
Right. So thanks, Brad. I really enjoyed this conversation, and really like when you describe your history and all these bands, it's just like reminded me the same thing, that the same bands that I've been listening to, and so I really enjoy this conversation, and all the best with the band. And then hopefully you can tour this region as well in the future.
I would love to, man. I would love to come out to the Philippines. One of my sponsors from a few years ago, Draven, the footwear shoes, they were one of my sponsors, and I was always dealing with the people out in the Philippines, and they were all metalheads. You know what I mean? Right. So it was I met a great group of people that I would love to come out there and see sometime and freaking rock some metal out there. So that'd be dope.
Right, Brad. So thanks for doing this again. So have a great day ahead.
All right, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.